but we can get in on some exclusive offers from Renault. To celebrate their third year as official car partner to GAA, Renault is offering a range of special offers exclusive to all GAA club members. So now you can take home the win right to your door. Check out Renault.ie/GAA to find out more.
With Renault, official car partner of the GAA, taking the passion of a nation to a whole new gear.
A grain of rice, a grain of rice is going to tip the scale. Just remember that, lads.
There's a small bit of a needle there.
Come on, Mayo, you've got to get Andy Moran into the game.
Listen back to England, and now they're really roaring. And I can tell you, there won't be a cow milk in County Clare for at least a week.
Hello everyone, you're very welcome to the Renault Irish Examiner Gaelic Football Show. My name is Paul Rouse and I'm joined by the former Armagh footballer Oisín McConville and by Oisín's former teammate at Crossmaglen and Armagh, Tony McEntee, who is the current manager of Sligo. We were meant to have two semi-finals this weekend, but there's only one, and it promises to be a classic, Dublin v Mayo. We will be looking at the matchups, at how the teams will seek to exploit each other's weaknesses or perceived weaknesses, and at whether Mayo footballers have a mental block about Dublin. But before we talk about the Dublin-Mayo match, we need to talk about the postponement by a week of the Tyrone v Kerry semi-final for COVID reasons. There's talk of more than a dozen players and possibly considerably more than a dozen having tested positively for COVID. Tyrone couldn't train last Thursday. They appear to have had only a few players training last Sunday, and it will be this weekend before a lot of their players can train again, and into next week for others. Oisín, should Tyrone be postponement?
First of all, Paul, I'm just thinking if we had one more crossman, we just have taken the thing over completely. Maybe we could get John Mack or Joe Kerry or somebody into your slot maybe for next week, and then we'll have completely taken over. But it's not an ideal situation for Tyrone. It's not an ideal situation for Kerry. I was surprised at the fact that that everything moved as quickly as it did, or it felt as if it moved as quickly as it did. Obviously, there was negotiations going on in the background. A week is probably neither here nor there for what Tyrone need at this stage. I know they're looking for 2 weeks, but it's already a tight enough schedule. I mean, we didn't have extra room in the calendar for backdoor games, which I think would have been essential this year. And all of a sudden, we're thinking about putting the All-Ireland final back a couple of weeks. I understand nobody wants a walkover. Nobody wants a team conceding an All-Ireland semi-final, especially when we had the lineup that we had, which I felt was as good as we've had in some time. In answer to your question, should they have got a week's grace? I think there should have been more thought put into it. In that, I don't think a week is any use to them. It seems as if it's neither here nor there. I was reading what Brian Dooher had to say, that even 2 weeks might not work for them either. So, I imagine that GA are going to try and facilitate them in whatever way they can to get this game going. But again, there's other teams involved now, like Dublin in particular. If Dublin were to come through their semi-final, I mean, they've no momentum built up now at all. This was a chance to get going and play obviously what is going to be a very tough game against Mayo, and then 2 weeks later an All-Ireland final, whereas now it looks as if it's pushed back to 3. That even could become 4. So it affects so many people, and I just wonder what's the difference between I know what the difference is. Tyrone are one of the big teams. It's an All-Ireland semi-final. But if you look at the situation we had last year with Sligo and Leitrim, both forfeiting games, I just wonder what the difference is. 1 year on that we're trying to push things back, because as you can see, it's already going to cause major issues as far as club football and all that sort of thing is concerned. So should they have, and keep coming back to that question, should they have got it? I think it's right that they are trying to be facilitated, but like I mean, if we start running into 2 weeks and it might still not make any difference, by all accounts, I mean this has had a serious ramifications, not just for the fact that the game has been called off, but for the health of some of these guys. You know, so I suppose that's the big question, but I'm still wavering. I suppose, yeah. I suppose that there was the opportunity to facilitate them, but I think we should have put more thought into it. In that a week wasn't going to make it any difference by the looks of things either way.
Tony, I know it happened before your management, but last year Sligo got no leeway in the Connacht Championship. Do you detect double standards at play here?
Paul, I suppose, listen, from the outside it looks, Paul, that Sligo was a small county. You know, nobody really mattered whether Sligo were playing or not in last year's game against Galway. And now we have suddenly a big game, All Ireland semi-final, and the thing seems to be different. I'm not quite so sure if that narrative is actually true. Last year, if we think about it, there was a lot of confusion, I suppose, and a lot of uncertainty when it comes to the GAA and how they're going to deal with COVID and what the circumstances were at that stage. It's also possibly the case last year that the COVID scenario with Sligo, I'm not quite so clear that Sligo asked for a postponement for that game. It may have been the case that there was such a noise about it and the GAA weren't going to offer any postponement that they never actually requested that. They never actually requested that postponement in the first place. So if that is actually true, well then maybe the GAA isn't so much at fault behind this altogether. And if there was a postponement last year, it would have been only for a couple of days or a week at max. And back to the point that Oisín made, is would it have made any difference anyhow, postponing a game like that for a week? So you would have players available, of course, but the amount of work you'd have done would be limited. And maybe we can come back to that point. And there's another situation in Sligo this year, of course, with the under-20s this year, in that the under-20s played Roscommon in the Connacht semi-final, again with a whole lot of players who had COVID, some of which missed the game, and most of them who played the game. Now, I was actually at that game, and we were looking forward to looking at some of those under-20 players who had shown great promise. And we played them in a challenge match actually earlier in the year. And there was some of them like really good and really dynamic. But when it came to the game against Roscommon, that Connacht semi-final, those players who had COVID and had recovered from COVID and who were actually playing were only a shadow of themselves. And there's quite a few of them, like, you know, including their centre back and some of their star forwards, like, you know. And therefore, they never really had that chance at all against Roscommon. And I think therein lays the problem that Tyrone face next week, is that this game will go ahead regardless. I don't think this will be deferred for another week. The game will go ahead, but they'll have no training done, and the physical or mental impact that COVID has had on those players will be present on the day. And you'll not know it until that ball's thrown in and you're trying to make those runs and you're trying to make things happen, and they're simply not happening. And I think that's going to be the problem now for Tyrone going forward. And if I recall back to my spell that I had with Mayo as part of the setup on the Stephen Rochford, there's a huge amount of everything going on at the minute in preparation for All Ireland semi-finals. Not just the tickets and the drama and everything else. The least they need is this distraction here, because there's so much going on. There's so much energy being put in by the management team to everything, and not just what goes on in the playing field, but particularly in this case, what goes on in the playing field. And in the absence of that happening in any meaningful way, and it has to happen in person, because you have to be walking through these things either on the field or through close dialogue and presentations or whatever they're going to have. In the absence of that happening, this Tyrone team is simply not going to be prepared in any shape or format. Like, and while us Ulster counties like to have something to fight for and to bury our heads in and have a chip on our shoulders, they'll certainly have all of that when it comes to COVID. But the reality is they simply cannot be prepared as well as they want to be. Like, and that's a huge problem.
Oisín, are you walking back on your prediction that Tyrone will beat Kerry? Do you agree with Tony? Yeah.
If you're giving me the opportunity to do that, Paul, absolutely. I think when Tony talks about the chip on the shoulder, I think Tyrone used that the last day. I think they looked like a team who was very, very focused on Monaghan. They probably look at realistically Monaghan inside out. Monaghan haven't really changed that much in the way they play over the last number of years. And I think when they come into that Monaghan game, most of the homework would have been done prior to the week of the game. I think losing the three lads, yes, it was a blow, but it gave them sort of like a cause. And I think they might have played that card already. And I think then what you're into then is trying to prepare for a team that takes a lot of preparation. I think, one of the reasons why I sort of give Tyrone a bit of a chance or a big chance was just the matchups and the fact that they have a couple of lads at the back who are dogs and are willing to sacrifice their game and try and take somebody in the opposition out of it. Like I'm thinking McNamee, Hampsey, and McKernan in particular. Like I'm thinking McKernan probably well fit for Paddy Clifford. McNamee probably and David Clifford and Hampsey on Sean O'Shea. Like if you blunt them three, you've gone a long way to definitely being competitive against Kerry. They weren't able to do that down there. And the other thing they didn't have down there was they didn't have a target man. You wouldn't believe how much ball they kicked into the full forward line in Killarney and got really very little out of it. Darren McCurry more or less played up there on his own. And Matty Donnelly's definitely come into it in the last couple of weeks. His form has definitely improved. And they used that long ball against Monaghan. It didn't always work, but they did get a couple of goal chances off it. So it gave them the opportunity to be a wee bit more direct. And I think when I looked at that game in Killarney, that there's a lot of things that they could solve pretty quickly. And to be fair, have done that. Like the reaction of just sticking Frank Burns in to play out and out sweeper against Donegal worked. I didn't see that. I didn't see that. I wouldn't have thought that was in the remit as far as Tyrone were concerned. I would have thought they will get more players back and defend more in numbers, but they trusted Frank Burns and he also was the springboard of a lot of their attacks. So look, I just thought that in that way they would have been well matched up against them. And then they have McCurry and Donnelly, and Mark Bradley did well when he came in the last day. Derek Canavan's back, looks fairly fit for maybe 35 minutes. So they definitely had a lot going for them, but this changes the dynamic completely. So I'll go with Kerry if that's all right with you, Paul.
That's fine. We'll come back to this. We'll come back to this again next week, and I'm sure you'll be changing your mind at halftime on Mayo Dublin. Tony, do you think if we turn to this Sunday, do you think Mayo will beat Dublin? This Saturday. Do you think Dublin will beat Mayo?
Dublin beat Mayo.
Yeah.
No, actually, I'd be very optimistic here that Mayo can beat this Dublin team, and for a number of reasons, Paul. But this Mayo team have so much athleticism. Like you don't appreciate this, Paul, until you're actually playing against this Mayo team. The ability of like the defense, for example. Like if you look at, Lee Keegan still has that running power. Michael Plunkett has good running power. Like he's well improved. Oisín Mullen is a fantastic athlete. So he is. Owen McLaughlin, like a former international junior cyclist. Like his engine is just unbelievable. Like then you come to Paddy Keegan or Paddy Dawkin, as the case is. So Matthew Ruan in midfield. Like so, you have all these people here coming forward from the defence, and offering huge running power. And not just huge running power, but actually good football ability, and finishing power. And I think therein lies the quandary here for Dublin. Like Dublin will love to get a good start and get ahead of steam and get going, But if this Mayo team actually grow into the game, they actually get stronger as the game goes on because their athleticism and running power gets better as the game goes on. And providing this game is kept, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, even to the half hour where Mayo is within points or leading Dublin, as the case might be at halftime, then Mayo is actually in a seriously strong position here. Like they have huge confidence. They have very little of any negativity that might have been there from losing All Ireland, because most of them young fellas coming through are hugely positive. Like Matthew Rand, the oldest of those younger players I'm have to mention, huge positivity and huge ability on the back of under 21 success and minor success throughout their times. So the other thing about them is that game that they now play is actually different to the team that was there before with Andy Moran and Aidan O'Shea and those older players from beforehand. They're a much changed team. Like, I mean, they're
isn't it? It's 2/3 of the players are gone from the 2017 vintage, really.
Yeah. Two-thirds of them gone, but they're replaced by just different dynamics and different types of players. And I think they're going to offer Dublin that's certainly a much different challenge. Now, the problem they still have, of course, is, well, who marks Con, for example, and who marks Kilkenny? But while that is a problem for other people, Oisín Mullen is well fit to mark any of those people. Keegan is still well fit to mark Kilkenny. Like, did Kilkenny ever get the better of Lee Keegan in a big championship match in days gone by? He certainly hasn't. So I actually see huge potential in this Mayo team. I see huge positivity about them. I see improvements in some of their key players, in particularly Aidan. Paddy Dorkin. Paddy Dorkin has gone from a super halfback to probably the best halfback in the country, and leads his team. He scores 3 points per game in any of the games that he's doing well, at least 3 points per game. I think Aidan O'Shea is a player who has stood up this year when people were asking questions of him, and I think he will continue to stand up now against Dublin. And if we do look at this Dublin team, there is questions marks in the Dublin team, but most of them I think are still in defence. There's a lot of gaps in that Dublin defence, and I don't see them being filled by better players.
But it's all very well saying Mayo have the running power and the athleticism, but they have to mind the ball if they're going to beat Dublin. So is their skill level at a high enough pitch when it comes down to the crunch against Dublin, or will they concede those turnovers that have destroyed them in the past?
Yes. Now, Paul, I suppose you're coming to an interesting point in intercounty football at the minute, which is the number of turnovers seems to kill teams rather than scoring chances missed or otherwise. Do they have the ability to retain the ball and play the game? I would be more in favour of teams that show more adventure. And I think this Mayo team can show more adventure. They are a good passing team and they're a good running team. And I wouldn't like to think that a team that has that ability to do that would suddenly be controlled by numbers. So it's a risk-benefit reward here we're looking at. And I think the Mayo team needs to go on the risk piece that they're playing at the minute. I think it's okay to lose a certain amount of possessions. I think it's okay to chance stuff, because otherwise you become so stale and rigid in how you play. And I don't think stale and rigid is what suits this current Mayo team. I think the dynamic piece is something that they need to build on and need to thrive and need to go forward and hang the hat on. They will lose balls, but I think if they can keep that to, say, 10 or 12 possessions, which they or dispossessions or turnovers that they have, I think if they keep it to 10 or 12, or maybe even as many as 14 turnovers in the game, I think it's well within their control after that. We know from this Dublin team that they want to work the ball into a very close scoring range, or at least that's what they're trying to do. That takes time, and in a team that's been very patient and takes time to do that, you run 2-3 minutes on the clock sometimes in order to get those scores that you want, or into those positions that you want to build up the scores. And therefore, they're not likely to get 25, 26, 30 maybe scoring chances. They're not likely to get those 30 scoring chances and that they need to rack up 18 or 20 points. And I think unless Dublin get 18 points in this game, they're not going to beat Mayo. And I still think that Mayo can generate 30 scoring chances in any game. And generate those 18 points to win this match.
You were in the dressing room for Mayo as a coach under Stephen Rochford on big days. Do Mayo have a mental block when it comes to Dublin?
No. And in all honesty, Paul, I don't understand how that question can actually be put, not to me, but to Mayo. I don't understand how that question put to Mayo, because if they had a mental block.
How do you react when people accuse Mayo of choking against Dublin when it comes to All-Ireland finals and semi-finals?
Honestly, I think it's a cheap thing, Paul. I think it's an easy accusation just to throw out. Goals that are errors that happen or chances that are missed in free kicks are just these things just happen. You know, if Mayo was a team that choked in All Ireland finals, they wouldn't be running the likes of that good Dublin team over this past number of years to a point and draws and replays and so on and so forth. Like, you know, like I honestly think it's an unfounded accusation that actually does not play into the narrative that has happened over this past number of years. You know, I think Mayo is certainly the team that has not choked. You know, that accusation could be levelled up until this year at Meath. It could be levelled at Kildare and Leinster. It could be levelled at any number of teams who have the ability but simply didn't perform against Dublin on days. You know, but Mayo fortunately have performed. Yes, mistakes have happened, and yes, there's been errors and any number of things that you might throw at them. But choking is certainly not something, and it probably hurts me a wee bit more because I was involved in that Mayo team and I have a connection to that Mayo team, you know. But even now, when I'm not involved and when I have no connection to them, I look at them and I say, how can you possibly throw an accusation against this team such as that, you know?
Yeah,
Tony, just Killian O'Connor. What have Mayo lost when they lost Killian O'Connor apart from because everybody's go-to is he's a free taker, but tell us what else he is.
Actually, again, this is another slight bugbear of mine. Killian O'Connor as an inside forward, Oisín, is so much more than a score taker. And what he is this: his work rate in tackling and the aggression he shows and the leadership he shows to that forward line is beyond comparison in any of the county teams that's there at the minute. Like if you watch him in games, if you watch him say from kickouts, the amount of movement he does, the coordination he has with the players around him, once that ball is delivered out, the pressure he plays on players and the tackling he does on it, and this is rubbing off now. For example, another player's coming through, like Ryan O'Donoghue as an example, is currently the highest tackler in the forward line for Mayo. So if you look at the games, and if we look back to say the Sligo game that we played in this year, the most tackles that was put in that game was by Ryan O'Donoghue, an inside forward. You know, and that was the case in some of the games beforehand. So he has set a legacy there at the minute where work rate is the basic standard of what those forwards need to show. But the other thing that he allows then is that he allows a bit more play to happen with Aidan. So does Aidan play inside? Does he play midfield? What does he do? When Killian's is an inside forward line, Aidan has the luxury then of staying out the field and doing that role out the field, and he can come in when he's tired or when he wants to add something different to a forward line. But with Killian gone, they really in a lot of ways need Aidan's leadership now more up towards the forward line, and that sort of takes away in a lot of situations from when Aidan offers so much out the field. And again on Aidan, if I can say the same thing, Aidan replicates so much that Killian does, like that work right around the middle field, the ability to tackle in close contact. Aidan O'Shea is definitely the best tackler in close contact in Gaelic games at the minute. Like if he gets his hands in round you, that ball's been ripped out of you. Fact against everybody, you know. So Killian is a huge loss here, and yes, there's the freeze, Oisín, but you know, they have other free takers there, McHale or Brian Walsh or
it definitely hasn't affected them free kick wise so far. Like, you know what I mean? Just obviously those kicks get more important as time goes on. But the one thing that I would say just in relation to the Aidan O'Shea thing, as much as he takes away, you know, it takes away whenever he goes into the forward line, he gives so much. You know what I mean? Like I think he won 3 balls the last day against 3 crucial balls just after half time in the full forward line, and it creates absolute panic in there. So is there a luxury to have him in there, or could he spend a wee bit more time in there?
Aidan could spend more time in there for sure, because and again back to this Dublin defence, you know, if Dublin line out again with say Philly, and Philly has been a fantastic footballer all over the years, you know, but like, are we really looking at a situation today where Philly McMahon is still able to mark Aidan O'Shea and try and bully him in there along with Johnny Cooper or otherwise, like, you know, and if this Dublin team is going to be properly tested, then you need to put pressure on that full back line, and therefore that's where Aidan comes in, clearly Oisín in there, you know. So is it a luxury having him in there? It probably is a luxury having him in there, Oisín, if I'm honest with you, you know, because when they come to midfield, Matthew Ryan is super. After that, they generally toss between Jim O'Connor, Conor Loftus, Aidan, whoever else. Jordan Flynn might come in midfield, you know.
When you're at Mayo, Conor Loftus never played in the middle of the field. Was he ever even thought of as a midfielder? Because I've always seen him as, He's always played in the forward line as far as I've seen. He played under 21 in the forward line, and he played any of the football he played at senior level or come on for Rochford or you guys. He seemed to come on the forward line. How did he develop in the midfielder?
Well, that was a chance that James Horn taken him. Like, and in fairness to James, he took a gamble, put him in midfield, and it has worked for him. You know, Connor's been regularly adding a point, 2 points, 3 points a match. You know, against better teams, it might be 1 or 2 points a match. But he certainly offers something different there as an attacking midfielder going forward. You know, I would say though, to be fair, Connor isn't a national midfielder, Oisín, like from a high fielding perspective or otherwise, he's not actually a national midfielder. But he certainly offers something different to an opposition. And at the minute, some teams are pulling the midfield back as the spare man, or the half forwards back as the spare man. And if that is the case, you're then bringing another forward onto a defence. You know, in Conor Loftus this case, and Conor has good movement. But I suppose the piece that might be lost when people look at Conor, it is his movement surely, but it's passing. He actually is a very good passer. I mean, he links up with the likes of Kevin McLaughlin and people like that. You know, you're adding people who have higher skill levels to provide better passes into an opposition. You know.
In terms of next Sunday, what are the matchups that will if you were in the Mayo backline, setting out the Mayo backline, who's picking up Con, who's picking up Kieran Kilkenny, and who's picking up Dean Rock?
So is that to me?
Yeah.
So Con will be picked up by Oisín Mullen, for sure. Keegan will no doubt pick up Kilkenny. He's done it every year. And he's done a fantastic job at it, you know. And then Dean Rock, you know, probably in the Hessian, you know, if it is in the cornerback. Like, you know.
Pádraig O'Hara he'll take Con Costello, will he? Or he'll take Costello in the corner.
Probably, like, you know. O'Hara might end up taking Dean Rock because, in fairness to Hessian, he may well have more pace than O'Hara to mark Costello there, you know. But the key thing will be shutting out Kilkenny. You know, and if we take it back, now Lee Keegan is obviously a wee bit older than Kilkenny now at this stage, and often people think that Lee isn't the same man as he was. But when you give Lee Keegan a job, like if you take it back to was it 17 or whatever the case was when we played thing, Lee Keegan Kilkenny was after coming off on All Ireland semi-final where he got, I don't know, some massive amount of touches. Was it 60 touches or something nuts? Anyway, whatever it was, you know, and controlled the game completely. In the final, he might have got 6 or 8 max touches, like touches, full stop, passes, full stop. And that's what Lee Keegan does fantastic, like, you know, man. So put him in the full back line on Con. We've seen what happened. He got turned for 2 goals, was it last year, the year before? Puts him under pressure again. But put him out in Kilkenny, make him mark Kilkenny, spoil Kilkenny, forget about what else is going on in the game. Lee Keegan is brilliant at it, guys.
At half time in last year's All Ireland final, Kieran Kilkenny had not scored a point from play on Lee Keegan in the previous 4 outings. And then I think he scored a couple of points in the second half of the All Ireland final last day. But that was a stat which just blew my
when
mind,
the game
like,
came.
you know? Yeah.
But if you were Kieran Kilkenny and you've Lee Keegan coming out of it, you're going to walk. Would you not just walk into the square, play him from the square? Like,
well, they definitely have to. They definitely under Dessie Farrell. They definitely have changed that a little bit. Like when Dessie Farrell first come in and we were talking about it, Paul, about what's the noticeable changes, and one of the noticeable changes was that Kilkenny had sort of changed his game from being that guy who links play and all that to somebody who is at the edge of the square, same way as he plays for his club, and he is supposedly the main score getter at that stage. So that's something that definitely they would consider, and I'm pretty sure will consider. But if somebody has your number, they tend to have your number, and that's it, you know.
Well, does this mean Paddy Durcan will go with Niall Scully? Somebody has to go with Niall Scully,
but that'll be for me. That'll be Owen McLaughlin. Owen McLaughlin will track Niall Scully, and he will cause Niall Scully something to think about going back as well at pace.
So does Michael Plunkett lose out then for Sunday? Because if Paddy Durcan's going to have to play somewhere in the half back line. So they probably won't be allowed to play 7. So if we have to pick 6 and Plunkett loses out, Are you playing without a sweeper then? You're playing without a +1 at the back. You're going man on Dublin, and it's try and press them as high up the field as possible.
But Mayo don't play with a +1 anyhow. They have people coming back and doing stuff. They don't play with a +1.
Never beaten Dublin in 10 years.
But that is nothing to do with the +1, Paul. In fairness, that's to do with scoring opportunities missed or scored. You know what I mean? Like, it's not necessarily to do with the +1. You know what I mean? Like and again, you're preaching to somebody here who is well aware of those circumstances. You know, but they will have Loftus holding from midfield. They will have Matt Duran that'll be covering back from defence as well. You know,
Dermot O'Connor will go on Brian Fenton, presumably.
Dermot O'Connor, probably.
Dermot
O'Connor will probably go on Brian Fenton, like, you know. And again, Dermot's a roamer, isn't he? Like, he's up and down and over and back and all the rest, you know. So let's see. If it was me now, I would be putting Matthew Ruan onto Brian Fenton, and again, so to cause Fenton problems going the other way, you know. Yeah. Matthew Ruan will make runs from 90 meters out, and he'll run when the ball is like so far away from you that you don't even know where he is altogether. He'll come from 40, 50, 60 yards behind play to get ahead of that ball, you know. And I think if it was me, you'd be looking to tear out Brian Fenton. Like, the last thing you want is to fit Brian Fenton with the last 15 minutes of the game and hitting the metal pot. Brian Fenton and James McCarthy coming at you. So the more times you can get them tracking you up the field, the better it's going to be for the last 15 minutes. Like, you know. So when you were in the Mayo dressing room, if there was one Dublin player who you could have taken into your dressing room, who would you have taken? James McCarthy, I would say. I think he's been the best Dublin player in the past. In this generation, I think he's the best Dublin player.
You said the right thing. Paul loves him, Tony.
Paul loves him.
He loves all the Dublin lads, but he loves him.
Every swine at home. No, that's not true. We've had this before, Oisín. We've had this before.
Leave it.
And if we look at Mayo then, in terms of matchups, who will Dublin go after? Who will they put on Aidan O'Shea? Oisín.
Who'll Dublin put in Aidan O'Shea? Possibly McCarthy. The way he drifts from the middle of the field into the full forward line. I think they'll want somebody with a bit of physicality and a bit of height. So probably McCarthy. I think who picked up Tommy Conroy in the All Ireland final last year?
McFitz, wasn't it?
McFitz. I think Ryan O'Donoghue is a key man for Mayo now.
On Merton will take him
if he's fit. It's a no-brainer. Similar in stature, and that definitely could work. Cooper actually played as sweeper against Kildare for a lot of that game, because obviously Kildare give them the opportunity to do that. I like the fact that Mayo won't give them the opportunity to do that, and Johnny Cooper, who doesn't look 100% fit to me, is going to have to pick somebody up. And who's he going to pick up in there, you know, with that, who has maybe an extra little bit of pace? And if I was Mayo, I might be targeting that. So if they need to pull O'Donoghue out to the half forward line, they have the opportunity to do that. I think Conroy is the one that probably has to stay inside. I think he's suited inside. I think he has to start the game better than he did last year. But he looks a lot in a better place than he was last year. I thought they bullied him a wee bit last year in the All Ireland final. So I think the other pluses. I'm not really sure who Johnny Cooper's going to pick up. I think Kevin McLaughlin came in the last day and looked as if he steadied the ship. He looked like he was somebody who had a little bit more time in the ball and was executing the ball into the forward line a lot better than what had happened in the first half. So I think he's key. The two McLaughlins coming on at half time the last day give them energy first and foremost, but also the Kevin fella give them a lot of know-how.
Yeah, he's brilliant option, isn't he?
Yeah, top class. He was top class last day when he came on.
He may not have the full game.
70 minutes, yeah.
70 minutes. That's the only issue there, and it's do you play him or do you hold him? is the question there. But Tony, can I ask you? You mentioned Aidan O'Shea's strength in the tackle, and that's undeniable. And his fast hands are they're incredible. Really, there are not too many people better in Gaelic games than him. But does he have an issue with running power? So has he not been exposed several times by Dublin round the middle, particularly late on in games where he hasn't been able to track?
Yes, Paul. But doesn't everybody have a weakness of some description? You know, like Aidan can only do so much. You know, and for that reason, that's why I don't think James McCarthy will be marking him, because that's a matchup that you don't really want. It's a matchup you don't really want. Like we had it at different stages toward, like particularly late on in games when Aidan gets tired. When James, like there was different stages there in All Ireland finals when James moved on to Aidan, and then James is making these powerful runs going forward, you know, and that's just not a situation that's going to work out, you know. And you would have seen it the last day against Galway too, particularly in, was it the first half? There was times in the first half where Mayo were struggling and Galway had the better of them, and some of that was because running powered, and once they were beating Aidan and getting around Aidan, then it was an overlapping situation of some description. So, in all honesty, I can't see James and Aidan being a matchup certainly that Mayo want in any case, you know. I do think as well, and I agree with Oisín here in relation to Johnny Cooper. Like Johnny Cooper cannot be left just to do his own thing. You know, when for years Cian O'Sullivan got away with, you know, covering off at half back and looking great, and he did look great in some of them games, but that's because he was left alone, and nobody marking him and him having control of the game and all that other stuff. You know, Johnny has been in that case certainly this past 3 or 4 years, where he's had the freedom of the field to do whatever he wants, and it makes Johnny Cooper look good. Now, in my view, Johnny Cooper has been a fantastic servant to Gaelic games, but in my view, Johnny Cooper is somebody who has been getting away with it now because he hasn't been put under pressure by having to mark somebody. And therefore, Mayo do have to not put somebody in Johnny, but make Johnny actually mark somebody. And they can do that because they'll have Tommy, as Oisín said, inside. He'll probably be marked by Michael Simons. Ryan is fantastic case as well. Ryan O'Donoghue walks like a dog over and back that field, and he has so much pace. And again, we had a fella marking him the last day, and after the game, the fella said he just couldn't get over the pace and the amount of work rate that he put in. The shift that he put in as an inside forward. This is against Sligo now at the time, like, you know, so it couldn't get over the amount of work that Ryan O'Donoghue does, and that's what's going to put pressure on whether it be Philly in there and Aidan or Philly in there and whoever it happens to be, you know. That has to be something.
I think Davy Byrne will definitely play in there, and I think he might pick up Aidan when he goes inside. Possibly, yeah. When you were preparing Sligo to beat Mayo or to play Mayo, did you think you had a real chance of winning?
Paul, we believe we had a chance. All right. Now, you're asking a fairly loaded question here, Paul. Let's be honest with you, right? Mayo is a Division 1 outfit now and going really well, right? And they're going really well before Sligo played them, okay?
Yeah.
Sligo is a Division 4 team who we had a good league, actually. It wasn't the way we worked out because it was a short league, but we had a good league. But we were going now to play a team which was so powerful and so pacey and so dynamic, okay? And we had a chance, and the chance was this, Paul. The chance was that Mayo turn up to play against lesser teams in the way that they did in the past.
Yeah,
it's only a game. We're only going to show up and we play this match to see how it goes, you know. And under those circumstances, and I've been in those change rooms with Clare or Derry at the time, you know, where we just about get over the line. Sligo nearly beat Mayo in an FBD or something before, in maybe 15, 16, 17, one of them years. And simply because Mayo it's only a game. We'll turn up, we'll turn out, and we'll go home. Like, you know, Tipperary in our quarter final, you know. These are games that Mayo should have been winning easily, and yet they were competitive matches because of the level that Mayo play up, you know. And then suddenly you go to play Dublin or Kerry or whoever the case is, Donegal, Tyrone at the time. All of a sudden it's a different Mayo team that shows up. So we had a chance if Mayo didn't show up, in all honesty with you, and we did show up. It was a home venue for us, you know. We could have got a start, we could have got a bit of momentum going, you know. And once you're not playing up to that level that you normally do, it's very hard to get into it. That didn't transpire, obviously, because Mayo showed up and they blew us out of the water from the start. But yes, we believe we had a chance of making this game at least competitive, you know. Now, when I say we believed it, maybe some of us believed it, some of us didn't believe it, and I think as the game transpired, and we're not talking about Sligo here, as the game transpired, maybe there was maybe more and more people in Sligo maybe didn't believe it, and that just made things more difficult.
Because the reality in front of us unfolding them,
unfolding
in front of them, where there was a gulf in class. Now, if you look at that gulf, that undeniable gulf, which is made real, and the evidence of the scoreboard shows you the gulf that's there at the moment, do you kind of look at that and kind of wonder, have I made a mistake here?
In context of what? Made a mistake
in the context of taking on that job in Sligo and thinking, this is the competition that I'm in, and this is the gulf that I now have to bridge.
No, because I am hoping that the GAA will eventually see common sense here and have a two-tiered competition that allows teams to compete at the level which they're competing at. Sligo is not going to compete with Mayo or any Division 1 teams, or probably any of the Division 2 teams in the next foreseeable couple of years. It's just simply not going to happen, Paul. The golf in class is so much, and I'm talking about here in simple things, not just availability of the quality of players, the strength and conditioning. We're years behind when it comes to strength and conditioning, and the physical aspect of us as a team, and our own developmental piece as a unit itself. Like Sligo in particular are a very young team. They're coming at an average age of maybe 23 or something like that. So we've quite a way to go to compete against teams which have an average age of 27 and 28 and are seasoned inter-county players of some description. So there's quite a gulf there. So do I see a role we're going to compete against Sligo? No, or against Mayo? No, not at all, and never, as far as I'm concerned, right now. But if the GAA eventually sort out their ship here, we will have a competition whereby Division 3 and Division 4 teams can be competitive at a certain level, and you have the option then of the Tailteann Cup that's in the league, and then the Tailteann Cup in the championship. And the provincial series can be just written off. As far as I'm concerned, the provincial series is long dead. And only has an entry level into what's going to be a league and championship format going forward. So under those circumstances, yes, Sligo and all the teams at that level can compete properly against each other.
Okay, I want to just move here now to look at this weekend. Conceivably, could mark. There's a genuine chance here that Mayo will win next Saturday, which marks, I suppose, the end of an era, and it would be something very interesting if that happened. Is this what you see happening? If you're called hand on heart to say that next Saturday, will Dublin's reign as All-Ireland champions end next Saturday? Oisín, you can go first.
I don't think so, no. I just think there's I think when I watched Dublin against Kildare, I liked it because it was very unapologetic, if that makes any sense. There was something very stubborn about it. And, I was talking about, would they not try and mix the game up a wee bit? Would they not try and, kick an odd ball into the forward lane and see if they could make something happen? Tony talks about, that play developing, which is great, if you're Dublin, and it shows patience, and it shows how comfortable they are in the ball and all, but look, it's very hard to watch sometimes, and but there was a stubbornness about it, that they were going to play like that, and nobody was going to force them into playing any other way. It wasn't a Mayo Dublin game. It wasn't helter skelter. It was very, very, very controlled, and Dublin controlled the majority of what was happening in that game. It was like, to go back to that thing that I said a couple of weeks ago, it was like set piece football. Everything was sort of set up, and if you're a manager, you feel as if I'm very much in control of what's happening in this game, which is a nice place to be when you're standing on the line. I mean, like if I think back to Armagh Monaghan, and I seen Banty one side of me and Geezer the other side, they had zero control over what was happening in that game. But Dublin looked very much in control. I think they'll improve a lot from that Kildare game, because Kildare did ask them a few questions, and when you think about Kildare, and I don't want to be too unkind, but like Flynn, it felt as if Flynn was almost carrying the fight to them up front on his own at times. Mayo offer a lot more questions than that, but I think there's a real doggedness about Dublin this year, that they look very stubborn. They look like a team that, to me, are sort of enjoying where they're at. That people are putting it up to them, that people are challenging the fact that that they're not in the same place as they were. And there's no doubt, it's okay to say it, they're not in the same place as they were. You just have to look at the bench, and you look at the people coming off the bench. And I'm not even talking because they're not household names. They just don't have the impact. And the stats back that up. You're not getting as much off the bench in the last probably 18 months as what they have done in the past. And for a lot of times, like, I can't remember, probably going back to 16 where maybe 14, 15, so I can't remember. But when Kerry looked as if they were kicking the ball away from it, they brought it off the bench and they ended up getting beat by 8 points. Do you know what I mean? They don't have that from the bench anymore. They have a bit of quality. There's no doubt about it. Like Pasquale, he looks like a player, but 10 minutes off the bench will tell you how much they trust some of the lads that's coming off the bench. So I think that's an issue. So for me, I still think Dublin will win.
So I suppose Oisín answered, I think, both sides of the question there, didn't he? Like, he thinks Dublin will win, but he gave all the problems that Dublin have, and if you think about them, if you think about all the problems that Dublin have.
Did that happen often in your dressing room?
I never opened my mouth in the dressing room, Paul.
Leave that conversation for a minute. Tony, you're in a position where you have to call it about who's going to win next Saturday, and you're staking stuff on it. What are you saying?
Well, let's look at Dublin now compared to Dublin 2 years ago. Okay, media-wise, they're not in control. All right, they had their issues around the keeper. Is he impacting them or not impacting them? But they're all over the place when it comes to media. They're in no contact with the media at the minute. There's so many stories and that. And while that may not annoy them that much, it's there. It's in somebody's head in the background. There's people asking players. There's family members asking them. All other stuff is a nuisance. Okay. The keeper, is he impacting their style of play or not? Up until now, no, because everybody has given them the freedom of the field when it comes to kickouts. Okay. Do we really think for one moment that Mayo is going to let them have the freedom of the park when it comes to kickouts, and they're not going to put him under pressure for kickouts, or at least in parts of the game or certain parts of the game? Of course they are, and in years gone by, Cluxton was under serious pressure when it comes to kickouts, let alone what's going to happen now. So I think that's going to be an issue for them. The playing style, as Oisín said, is controlled. Okay, he might as well have said boring or inadventurous or any other thing whatsoever. Okay, control has been extremely nice to them at the minute, and that playing style is so controlled that it actually is stifling them, as far as I'm concerned, and it's going to cause them problems because they don't want to move outside of whatever they've been asked to do. The bench, Oisín already mentioned, okay, is not offering the impact that it has been in the past, okay, and this is leading, I would imagine, leading to issues with their confidence. It's already well documented, and again, they may just been through a spell here that they've only beaten teams by single-digit scores or whatever it is this year so far in the Leinster Championship, okay. This Dublin team is used to being brash and confident and arrogant in a good way. And they can't be this year because there's so many questions over them in so many different ways. And yes, of course, they can answer them against Mayo, and they might blow Mayo out of the water and all that stuff, okay? But they're going into a game without that level of self-confidence that they would have had in the past, They no longer have as many of the star power people that they would have had in the past, right from Bernard Brogan through to now. They have Conn, of course, and they have Kilkenny. After that, Costello, there's a lot of questions on Costello. Does he perform in big days or does he not? He came on and finally scored 4 points, but he blindsided a lot of people at that stage. Is he better? Is he not better than Dean Rock? Can the two of them play together on the same team? Can they afford to have the two of them on the same team or not? Is he as reliable as a free taker or is he not? And he's just simply not. He's much more erratic as a player than Dean Rock is. So I think there's certainly an awful lot more questions than they would have had in the past. And while Mayo in a lot of ways have not been tested, like beating Sligo and beating Leitrim has not been a test for Mayo in any ways, but it has allowed them to build confidence. It has allowed those young players to establish themselves in some way into inter-county football. Galway, likewise, while in years gone by struggled to beat Galway and didn't beat Galway in many years down in Connacht, this year they did beat Galway, and not only did they beat Galway, they completely blew Galway off the field in the second half of that game. Like Galway were a non-event in the second half of that game. And you might ask questions on Galway, surely, like, but we got to give some credit to Mayo at some point here. So I'm quite happy to stand over and say that I think Mayo will actually beat Dublin this weekend, and they certainly have the best chance in the past 4 years of beating this Dublin team and calling an end to this.
Okay, I was just thinking something there. Do you think the Dublin people around the Dublin setup, the players, the management, do they feel that things are unraveling on them? Like, you guys were part of the most successful club team in GAA history. When did you know your empire was crumbling?
Well, Oisín retired, Francie retired, John retired.
Well, the funny thing is, Tony retired before us all, and he was
Is this what it comes down to? The quality of footballer that's at your disposal?
No, but Paul, I think to be fair, when you looked at the cross team, we transitioned from a team that was big and strong and physical, and played a fairly direct type of football to a team that now become more mobile and athletic. And the transition was there because the type of player changed, and there was still a high quality player at club level that managed that.
But you stopped winning.
We didn't. Paul, we stopped winning after about 12 years or 15 years.
Well, exactly. Dublin have been going at inter-county level at a level that nobody has gone at before, just as you guys did, and you stopped winning, and they will at some point stop winning. You must have known that this was happening.
Paul, listen. For me, I don't know you know it until you reflect back on it. At some point, you reflect back. You will see stuff that you're trying to overcome and things like that. But I think when the year is over and you reflect back and you say, well, could we have done that differently? Could we have done it better?
Yeah.
The reality is, Paul, I'm not quite sure they have the same caliber of player of people that has moved on. And what we talked about James McCarthy there briefly, just for a second. Like James McCarthy. The reason I think James McCarthy is the most important player to them in the years gone by is that when the chips are down, James McCarthy always stands up. Always. He always comes through in the run. He always does the hits, and he does it under the radar. He keeps his head down. He's no big profile for anything. He's hard, he's rough, he's rugged. He does basics very well in a lot of circumstances, but he runs his legs to the ground. And that's James McCarthy. James McCarthy's not 26 anymore. At what point in time is James not going to be able to keep this going? Will these other players be able to offer the same that James has? Is Fenton the same type of player as James McCarthy? Fenton's brilliant, no doubt about it. But will he be James McCarthy in 5 minutes left of the game when you want him to win that game? It's yet to be proven, yet to be seen. So for me, I think that's the piece here. Like, teams transition and teams move on. But now there's an opportunity here with Dublin. It's not as strong as they were. They may well be in another year or two when some of them younger fellas, McMahon and people like that, come through, and Bulger and people like that come through and develop themselves properly as senior players. But right now, I think they're vulnerable.
I think there's a time in when you're sort of when you are transitioning or new players are coming in, people are leaving, that you do try and you're trying to hold on to it for as long as you can. And you don't want to believe that it's crumbling, not crumbling, but it's not quite the way it was.
Yeah.
And you're just doing everything you can to try and get the last, whether that be a championship or a league or what one last win out of it. And eventually it just catches up on you. And you find yourself sitting at home going, how did that happen? Whereas if you sit back and reflect a number of years later, you will see that the standards slipped slightly.
Yeah,
that thing, and like this is me nitpicking completely. But I watched the Dublin warm up from start to finish against Kildare. I didn't really think there was much shape or make to it in comparison to what I normally have seen. Because I'm obviously interested in warm-ups to take ideas back to the club and stuff, but it just didn't feel 100% right. Just didn't feel right. Now, is that going to stop them winning in All Ireland? On its own, no. But if there's other little pieces, like Tony talked about the Cluxton situation, which is completely, and we've talked about, completely unacceptable. And completely un-Dublin-like, okay? So you add all those little layers in, and all of a sudden, then you have an issue. But I still think they might get one more out of it. There might be one more in them.
I think it's something else as well, though. If you look at Mayo, I think the best footballers in Mayo are on the Mayo panel. If you look at Kerry, with the arguable exception of Peter Crowley, the best footballers in Kerry are on the Kerry panel.
Yep.
If you look at Dublin, I would say Stephen Cluxton is still the best goalkeeper in Dublin. I would say Paul Mannion is in his 20s. Zach McCaffrey is in his 20s. But the best footballers in Dublin are not on the thing. It's hard to win in All Ireland without the best footballers in your county on the panel. I would argue. At the same time, they still have to be beaten. And do you think, though, that those key players in the Dublin team, they must know that the supporting cast isn't what it was? They must know that the level isn't there. And does that not impact on performance at the end of the day?
I don't think they're sitting back thinking that, though, those Dublin big players. I think what they're thinking is, I need to get him where he needs to be. How do I do that? Because when you're a player, you're not reflecting. You're stuck in the middle of it all. And when you're stuck in the middle of it all, you're not sitting back going, I don't know if he's just as good as Jack McCaffrey, or he can't make this. You want him to do that, so you're trying to get him to that level. Maybe not as a player, but definitely to the pitch of the game where he's doing similar things to Jack McCaffrey or Paul Mannion or somebody who's doing that in that situation. And maybe that's why it's as at the minute it looks as manufactured as what it is, because there's a lot of coaching going on, not just from the coaching staff, but maybe from the players as well, that, we're not going to take that rash shot. We're going to keep manipulating and walking it to the point where, well bored out of our trees, but they still get a score out of it,
Tony, I have one last question for you. Regardless of who wins between Dublin and Mayo, do you think it's Kerry's All Ireland?
No, I don't think it's that straightforward at all. Paul, we saw the collapse of Kerry last year against Cork. We know they're erratic. I think if we can say this, without being too harsh, that this Kerry team is not just untested, but unproven as well. They have excellent individual footballers, but they're defensively all over the place. They have playmakers and a reliance on certain players, and particularly Sean O'Shea and David, and well, I don't know if David took, but particularly Sean O'Shea. But as a coaching and management outfit, and again, this is very hard to be critical of a team that's so powerful as that. As a coaching and management outfit, we don't really know what Peter Keane will do when it comes to how this team is going to be set up, how they're going to play, how they're going to approach any game, and when it's as erratic as that, then you cannot put your chips on this Kerry team to win this All Ireland. You
feel something similar, Oisín?
Yeah, I've said it for a while now, until they actually do it.
Yeah.
The judge, you can't judge. And look at, we talked to the Gooch a number of weeks ago as well, and he said exactly the same thing. He said, they don't trust, in Kerry, they don't trust them, and until they win All Ireland, they won't be trusted. And when you consider what happened last year, I know I might be looking too much into it, but for 15 minutes certainly for 10 minutes against Cork, I mean, they literally were all over the place. So I mean, if Cork can do that to them, cut a Tyrone or a Dublin or a Mayo, what could they do to them? Look, it's pressure. Do you know what I mean? They haven't had to perform under massive pressure, and until they come through that, then there's just a massive question mark over them.
Either way, it's a great match to look forward to on Saturday, and it makes kind of a wonderful curtain raiser to the big game of the weekend on Sunday between Offaly under-20s and Common under-20s. I can't pretend to be in any way neutral about this, and as Breen players said, when Offaly were taking down Dublin in the Leinster final, to Ashéry Muintir Ivali Bio Brever. Basically, the insurrection, the resurrection of Offaly football is underway. I would like to wish the players and the management, friends of mine, the very best of luck on Sunday. We'll finish with that. Thank you to Larry for running the podcast, to Raf Rocca for everything he's done for us today, to Tony Lean, to Renault and everyone at Examiner Sport for making it happen. A huge thanks to Oisín and especially to Tony McEntee for joining us. We'll be back soon.
With Renault, passion for what drives you. Official car partner of the GAA.
A grain of rice, a grain of rice is going to tip the scale. Just remember that, lad.
There's a small bit of a needle there.
Come on, Mayo, you've got to get Andy Moran into the game.
Listen back to Oisín.